Well, good day and welcome to Pitbull 214, a podcast developed for veterans, their family members, friends, relatives, and really anyone who cares about vets. I am your host for this program, retired Air Force vet Rick Perales, and I am very pleased to be with you today. We have a great show for you today, and it's a little bit complicated because we did this once before with my guests, who I'll introduce shortly, and we lost a few minutes at the end, some vital minutes, talking about some critical things. So I sat down last night before Ed and I got back together and reviewed the entire video interview, and it was a long one. And so we had already decided we were going to do two parts of this interview. And I was going to ask Ed to, let's do it all over again, an hour. But when I listened to the interview, it was quite good. It caught Ed at his best. He was funny. He was intense. He rolled with the punches. We laughed. It was the kind of interview that I really enjoy. So instead of doing that, we're going to tape a little at the front. Then we're going to go back to the original video interview. And then at the very end, we're going to come back at the studio and we're going to finish it up with about 10 minutes of talk about a couple of important things. But before we get started, let me do something very important. You'll understand that much of what we're going to talk about in the video comes from this book, Life on a $5 Bet. It is a story of Ed Mechenbier, who is our guest today, and it's a great book. And it's somewhere in the video, we'll put the information of how you can buy this book. It's a great read. But for today, I'm going to first welcome my good buddy Ed, and then I am going to ask him to sign this for me.
Okay, let me see. Come up with something
Clever,
cute and wooding.
And while he's doing that, one of the ways I enticed Ed to come here for the interview, because it's always better when you have the guest with you instead of doing it over the internet, is he is an avid golfer. And so I used to live on the Beaver Creek golf course. He'd be out there at 6 a.m. every morning. It was an unspoken tee time, and he'd get through in about an hour, 2 hours, I don't know, somewhere real fast. So he loves the golf course. I invited him over. We just golfed. We had a lunch bet on the golf outing using handicap, and it was a tight contest, but Ed pulled that out at the end, so I had to pay for lunch. Actually, he whooped me, but we don't need to get into that. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you, sir.
And do you have anything to say before we get into the tape?
Well, I appreciate the chance to come here and help you with your mission, which is helping veterans, because, Lord knows that we're the lucky ones, and there are a lot of people out there who need help, and there are a lot of things out there a lot of organizations and people who are willing to help. So thank you for what you're doing.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Thank you, General. So with that, I'm going to sign off. You're going to go to the video interview, and we'll be back afterwards. Pitbull out. Well, welcome back to Pitbull 214, a show for veterans, for their families, friends, neighbors, anyone that cares about vets. I am your host, Rick Perales. I am retired Air Force, and I'm pleased to be with you today. I want to again thank everybody for joining the podcast. The viewership's getting bigger and bigger, and hopefully we're helping some vets along the way. Today is one of those episodes that I call Veterans Telling War Stories to Veterans. And very intriguing. And I learned so much about these people that I know and about what they did. And I hope you enjoy this one. If you don't enjoy this one, you're not right, because this is a great story. My dear friend, Ed Mechenbier, 2-star general, retired, flew F-4s in Vietnam. And Ed, welcome to the program. Good to have you.
Thank you, Rick. Good to see you again. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, Roger. And we will plan that golf date. Ed's morning routine is he's got the first tea time every day at the golf course. Used to be Beaver Creek. Now, which one's yours?
Golf Club of Dublin.
Dublin, which has a million great golf courses. And of course, the memorial is up there. So we got to get together, and I got to learn a few things from this man. You're shooting your age still, right?
Yeah, but I'm old enough now. It's getting pretty easy.
It's getting easier? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm not even close. But if you grow older, you lose distance. So anyways, another story for another time. We will get together. Hey, Ed, so I so enjoy your story. And we had one dry run. I'll call it a mulligan. The technology didn't support it, probably user error, my error. But why don't you please start us off at the beginning? Your family, growing up, your memories. What inspired you to do what you do? And how did you go towards that end?
Well, I was the oldest of 8 good Catholic kids. A father who was a welder and a steam fitter, so we did a lot of traveling around the country. I've got 7 brothers and sisters, and most of them were born or built in different places around the country, from Toledo, Ohio to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Erie, Pennsylvania. I was born in Morgantown, West Virginia. And as such, my father being a tradesman, when time came for me to go to college, the coffers were not such that he could say, pick your school and I'll pay your way. He said, son, you better get yourself a good scholarship somewhere. And he says, in fact, I'll bet you $5 that if you try to get in one of these military academies, you can get in. So that was the whole genesis. I had no prior service inclination. It was just a matter of necessity.
No prior flying private, but you didn't have that kind of money, right?
Nope. The first time I got on an airplane.
So as a kid, you weren't interested in flying. You didn't know enough to be. What did you do growing up? Were you in sports?
Oh yeah, I played baseball. I was too skinny and too small to play football. And I lived in the foreshadow of my younger brother, Jim, who was an all-state football player. And everybody knew Jim Mechenbier. Everybody was in awe of the Bull Moose, as he was called, in high school. And eventually went on to Dartmouth on a football scholarship. At 146 pounds, graduating from high school, I was barely able to swing a baseball bat. But baseball was my game. I was fast, and I could throw hard.
Were you a pitcher?
I was a pitcher, and then I was also a catcher. And when I got to the Air Force Academy, I played baseball there. I looked around a little bit, and I saw a couple of recruited catchers, and I didn't see any recruited third basemen. I knew I couldn't pitch at that level, so I became a third baseman.
How many years did you play at the academy?
2.
Yeah.
And then it became a matter of focusing on the important thing.
Getting out of there, right? Graduating. So let's talk about the $5 bet. Your dad, you didn't have the funds. He didn't have the funds, all those kids. And so he told you that. And I think you were a pretty good student, right?
In high school, I did good. Yeah, I graduated in the upper 10% of my...
So then did you apply to all the academies or just the Air Force Academy?
In those days, you applied to the service academies, and Congressman Paul Schenck then would figure out who he was going to nominate for the different service academies. So he nominated me for the Air Force Academy. My dad had been in the Navy, so...
So were you surprised that you got the nomination? That's very competitive.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm totally flabbergasted. I mean, I was already making plans to go to a college in Kansas City. Yeah. Because I didn't think.
And what were you going to study in Kansas City?
Law.
Boy, you talk about a Y in the road. Yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you get to the academy. You're playing ball a little bit. What are your earliest thoughts of the academy?
Love it from day one. I mean, we took in 833. We graduated 499. So it was a pretty good attrition rate there. 30-some%. Some people just weren't made for that. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I loved it. There was not a single day that I wished I wasn't there. I mean, I just love the regimen. I love the routine. I like the whole idea of being a cadet at the Air Force Academy.
And how did you do?
Academically, marginal. I graduated in the upper quarter of the second half. So, in the middle, just below the middle. But on the military side, I was always on what they call the commandant's list. So I was always doing well academically. I mean, militarily.
And when did you determine, and how did you determine you wanted to fly for the Air Force?
After your second year at the academy, so this would be between my third class year and my second class year, which in civilian parlance is between my sophomore and junior year, we went on a field trip to the Far East. And somehow or other, I got the lucky draw to go for a ride in a fighter airplane, the F-102 Delta Dagger. And it's it was, normally it's a single seat airplane, but this is a trainer version. And I got to ride in this fighter airplane. So I got to go straight up, straight down, roll over. And I said, bingo, I want to be a fighter pilot.
Keys did you play? Did you experience on that flight? Do you remember?
What?
How many G's did you experience?
Oh, probably no more than about 3, 4, or 5. But
He was
I
being
didn't care. Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful experience, flying out of Okinawa out over the Pacific Ocean and coming
So you
back.
come back after that, and you put your name in the hat for flight school.
Well, yeah, but in those days, you had to be physically qualified to fly to even go to the Air Force Academy, because that was obviously new. I was in a 6th graduating class, so there was a lot of pressure. If you didn't want to go fly, you had to go tell the commandant why not, and it was not a pleasant conversation, so to say. Now the standards and needs of the service are such that you don't have to be qualified to fly to go, but being physically qualified in terms of your physical fitness and mobility and your eyesight, they had to be able to go fly. So
when you went to the academy, you knew you were good. That was your expectation. You're right.
Yes.
It's different today.
Yeah,
So
I had no idea what
imagine-
I was going to do, but I went.
So I imagine some people go to flight training, undergraduate flight training, and they can't get over air sickness. And they
We have a
hate
good
it
mutual
because of
friend.
that, right?
Yeah, we have a good mutual
so
friend.
I
who has
imagine
that
you had a
problem.
few of those folks, right?
Yeah, we had a few. Some people just don't have the hand-eye coordination to fly airplanes, in close formation, or didn't have the aptitude to handle the G-forces and the spatial disorientation. But I would say, probably 25% of people washed out of pilot training.
Okay, you do okay. You're. I'm not going to say that equation. Bottom quarter of the top half of the whatever. What's that?
I was number 1. I graduated top of my class.
Oh, in pilot training.
Oh, yeah.
I was still talking about the academy. Okay.
Oh,
You were
yeah,
number
yeah.
1. So you had no doubt on whatever they call that night where you guys get your weapons system that you were going to get something that you wanted. A
Right.
fighter.
Yeah. I was
Okay.
confident.
So you were a happy young man.
Very.
Okay. Take us to the next step, the next training.
Well, after
F4, I think.
F4, yeah. So you graduate from the academy, then you go off to undergraduate pilot training for 52 weeks a year. And then after that, as you get to the end of that, you get to make your choice of where you want to go fly, subject to what's available. And so then it was a 6 months training program then into the F4C at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. And then after that, my first operational assignment was at Royal Air Force Station, Bentwaters, England.
That was for how long?
I was there, as it turned out, to be about 6 months. And then 66 of us volunteered to go to Vietnam. And there was that wasn't all bad, because, Vietnam War was going to be over. It was winding down. I mean, this is 1966. I mean, heck, it was in the bag. So if you wanted to get some ribbons and get some combat experience, you better get there quick. So, like I say, being volunteered to go to Vietnam was not the worst thing that could happen to a young first lieutenant aircraft commander in the F4C.
You were single, no kids, made it a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, talk about it. You go to Vietnam, you're not nervous or scared, you're not worried.
Too
You're just
dumb.
going to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's going to take you about 6 or 8 months to get your 100 missions over North Vietnam. And I made good progress. I got 113 and a half combat missions, 80 and a half of them over North Vietnam. And it was all set, and I had my follow-on assignment. And I was ready to come home and then move on to fly F-106s at Duluth International Airport.
Oh, it didn't go quite like that, did it, General?
No, we volunteered for that. One more trip to Hanoi that we didn't need to, and took a little TDY for 6 years.
Yeah, interesting story, right? You're at breakfast, you just flew your sortie. You're with your backseater who turned out being a good friend, actually a roommate.
Yeah.
And they're short pilots and they ask you if you do one more.
Yep. Yeah, you could have said no. I mean, once you had 75 missions over North Vietnam, you didn't have to go to Hanoi. They were the hot spot. You didn't have to do that. Figured you dodged enough silver bullets. But they didn't have enough people who were qualified, didn't have 10 missions over North Vietnam to go to Hanoi that day. So they asked me, says, hey, would you take one more? We know you don't have to go to Hanoi, but would you take this because we don't have enough people experienced in Hanoi to go? So at that point, like I said, I had 80 missions over North Vietnam. I asked Kevin, I said, Kevin, what do you think? He said, go for it. I said, we're golden.
Take us through that special flight.
Well, it's 14 June 1967. The MiGs hadn't been up in a while, which normally we flew with missiles on the airplane to chase the MiGs away from the bombers, the F-105s that were carrying the bombs. But the MiGs hadn't been up very much lately, so we were on a bombing mission, which we occasionally did in the North Vietnam. The target was the Vu Chu Railroad Yard, about 30 miles northeast of Hanoi. And as we rolled in on the target, oh, by the way, how did we get there? Well, the same way we did every doggone day. We came in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The morning go was 10:15. The afternoon go was 2:15 at 15,000 feet. And the Vietnamese knew exactly where we were, so that's where they laid all the anti-aircraft fire. And they knew what time we were going to be there, as I said. We rolled in the target, dropped our bombs, coming off the target, and I lit the afterburner to make the airplane go a little bit faster because we were down in the area where really shooting at us a lot. And the engine exploded. So it's important to understand the world's greatest fighter pilot did not get shot down. I had a maintenance malfunction. So anyhow, the engine exploded. And the F-4 had
note it. So note it.
Yeah, the F-4 had no bell cranks, no push rods, no cables. It was strictly a hydraulic flight control system. And so when the engine exploded and the big fire started, we quickly lost our flight controls. I had the nose of the aircraft up about 45 degrees after coming off the bomb run. But when we lost our flight controls, the airplane started doing snap rolls to the right. I could stop it as it got about wings level, and then it would snap over again. And it went over 6 times, and every time the nose got a little lower. And there's this wonderful gentleman sitting about 8 feet behind me there named Kevin McManus, as we've discussed. And he said, Ed, I don't think we're going to make it, because he could see the downward spiral we were on. Don't bother me, Kevin. I got this under control. The world's greatest fighter pilot. I'm going to save this airplane. Ed, I don't think we're going to make it. I'd always told Kevin that there's one way I'm going to tell him to bail out. I'm going to say bail out. I'm going to say Kevin. I'm going to say bail out. And if he hears the second bailout, he's second out, because the backseater had to go first. Otherwise, he'd get hit by the canopy coming off the front seat. Well, he paused after I said bail out, Kevin, to say sayonara, Ed. We went out together exactly the same time. How he didn't get hit by my canopy, who knows? But by then there was no airplane left. It was just a big orange fireball, and 2 seats came out of the bottom doing 700 miles an hour. And that's when the fun started, because we looked down there, and we were not far from where we had dropped our bombs. And there were about 60, 70 million people probably down there. And they all had 6 guns, and they were shooting at us. So all these bullets are whizzing by
They
us.
weren't big. Yeah, they weren't big fans.
No,
they
no,
were
they
shooting at you, but they never hit you.
Never hit us, but you could hear them going, and you could see the holes that they were putting in the canopy. Well, I had a personal weapon, a .38 caliber pistol. And for anybody who knows...
Oh, that's all you need to take on those guys, those
oh,
millions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bitty thing. So
I took down. I wasn't going to get in a firefight with anybody. I took that sucker. I threw it as far away as I could. So when I hit the ground, they're looking for my gun because I got the holster, but no gun. So there's no reason to get into a firefight with 60,000 million people. Slight
Yeah,
exaggeration.
Who knows with that move, you not having a weapon, you're not being a threat.
Oh yeah,
That could have went the other way.
Could have gone south in a hurry. Yep.
So they gave you the welcome treatment for a while, right?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Depends on your perspective. For them, it was rather enjoyable, but for Kevin and I, it was being run through a bunch of villages. They cut everything off. They had no concept of zippers and snaps and Velcro. They big machete, and they just cut all of our flight gear off us. And there's a picture of me standing there in my skivvy shorts, about a head taller than anybody else around me. But they had these big knives that they had cut everything off. And they ran us through a bunch of villages, and they were throwing rocks at us and, sticking us with sharp sticks and burning us with cigarettes, and just running us around, showing us off to the local crowd.
And they escorted you to where you would be a resident for a few years.
Yeah, we were there. We were subject to the hospitality of the villagers for about 12 hours. And then in the middle of the night, the regular army people came and got us. And we got a very short helicopter ride from where we were near the Vuchu Railroad Yard to downtown Hanoi. And we checked into the Hanoi Hilton on the 14th of June, 1967.
Was that a 5-star then?
It was still a brand new property, actually, it was an old place. It had been built by the French in the 1890s that put the Vietnamese in. And as you can imagine, the Vietnamese are slightly smaller stature than Americans. So everything was kind of like, we'll call it, 75 to 80% size to fit us, including the footlocks and the manacles and all the rest of that stuff, the concrete slabs we slept on. So it was, and it didn't have any heating or air conditioning and the running water.
As the world's greatest pilot, did you feel like you were trained appropriately in the event you went down? Again, you weren't shot down, mechanical. Right. But were you ready for what you received, what you were going into?
Well, as you well know, being part of our great Air Force, you're trained for a lot of stuff. And in this case, the training at the academy, the training where you learn to have not physical abuse, but physical, stress put on your body. Got that. And then you're used to having people yell and scream at you and deprive you of things. At the academy, it was a lot less, meaningful or impactful than it was in Vietnam. And then I'd gone through survival school to include Stead Air Force Base, where they had employed the practices that were used by the Koreans and by the Germans in previous wars to stress us, again, without hurting us. But it was a real good physical and mental stress exercise that you learn. And then the Jungle Survival School, which I kind of had a pretty easy trip through the Jungle Survival School, but again, a stress physically and mentally situation. So yes, to answer your question, I saw the good cop, the bad cop in terms of the interrogators. I was ready for the physical abuse. Yeah, physical abuse, and I was prepared in the fighting. Then, no offense to the ladies, it used to be called the Fighting Man's Code of Conduct. So we were trained there, and everybody knows what that says. I will give name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. But that very sentence goes on to say, I will evade answering further questions to the utmost of my ability. So the trick was to take as much physical abuse as you could without becoming just a babbling idiot who would say anything they want, do anything they want. So that's when you started going beyond name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. You started making up stuff. They had no idea what was real, what was potentially doable. So you can make up all kinds of stuff. We had them believing we could put a 20 millimeter gun out of an F-4C at 20,000 feet between the eyes of a water buffalo at 30 miles. And they believed that stuff. So why not?
We're looking for key words for, I admit to killing orphans and...
Oh, yeah. I mean, You could do things like say, I, Edward John Francis Mechenbier, a misspelled pronunciation of my own name, formerly a fighter pilot in the States of United America, Air Force, by the way, guilty of bombing churches, dams, dikes, pagodas, cesspools, pool halls, and various other sordid bawdy houses. You know, you could go on like that, but they'd heard the word guilty and bombing and churches, and they thought that was all fabulous. And in fact, one guy by the name of Jack Fellows was recorded, and he said, "I and my squadron mates off the aircraft carrier Ticonderoga, and my squadron mates, Clark Kent, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Johnny Carson," just made a bunch of names. We're all guilty. We did this. And the Vietnamese thought that was fabulous.
But there's a part B to that, right? When
There's
they
a part
took
B
that
to that.
intel forward.
They took it forward and published it. And then somebody told them that they'd been had. So they came around and, there were a few repercussions from it, but we'd had our thing. You gotta understand, we never thought we were out of the fight. We were never just, a sideshow to the main thing. We always realized, again, per the code of conduct, that we were in this thing still. And we had an obligation to conduct ourselves as American fighting men and responsible for our actions and dedicated to the principles, as the guy went on to say, to the principles that made my country free. So we felt like we had an obligation to continue to push back as much as we could.
Keeping an organization, you talked about the commander of the camp, how you went about doing that, right? Talk about that a little. And keeping that military formation and structure.
Well, the Vietnamese never identified or recognized our rank. And they never considered us prisoners of war, even though they were signatories to the Third Geneva Convention. To them, because they had never declared war, we were criminals. And in fact, jokingly, I am a convicted felon of air piracy in North Vietnam. Went to court in North Vietnam and stood there while they pronounced me a convicted felon. But even in the cells, and they tried to keep us from seeing other Americans, isolate us. You live with one or two or three, sometimes four other guys for most of the experience. Even at the one room level, we had a military structure. And I think I might have told you this before. At one time, I was living with three other guys. And three of us were Air Force Academy graduates in the class of 1964. And then we had one ROTC guy from Oklahoma State, Galen Kramer. Well, Ron Bliss, Kevin McManus, Ed Mechenbier. Same data rank, but B comes before M, which MC, Kevin, came before me. So we made Ron Bliss the senior ranking officer. And we recognized his status among the four of us, that Ron was the guy to whom we would defer in our interaction with the Vietnamese. If the Vietnamese told us to do something, we would slow roll it until Ron gave the nod, okay, go ahead and do it. Just trying to always push back to the Vietnamese that we had a rank structure. Now, when we got to the situation where we had communication in a building, we would again defer to whoever in that building was the senior ranking officer to give us kind of general broad guidelines. Day to day, we couldn't say, well, hold it, let me go talk to Colonel Garino here to see if I'm allowed to do that or not. That didn't happen. But we took guidance from whoever we could communicate with at the highest level. Now, just an aside on that, by the way, MC comes before ME. So strictly speaking, Kevin outranked me. So I might have been the aircraft commander and he was the systems operator, but I always blamed him for what happened to us because my end of the airplane was doing just fine. His was on fire and he was the senior ranking officer in the airplane. So till the day he died, I blamed him for our whole experience.
That long ago, right? You lost him a few years ago.
Yeah, Kevin died 12 years ago. And again,
that long
ago, yeah. A chain smoker.
And you guys kept in close touch, and that was a special relationship.
And we still talk every day. go back to the shoot down. Ed, I don't think we're going to make it without Kevin being the senior ranking officer in the airplane, giving me guidance and mentorship. I'd have rubbed that sucker into the ground trying to keep it flying. So every morning, one of the first things I do is thank you, St. Kevin, for giving me the rest of my life.
He's up there and he's smiling, I'm sure. Smoking a cigarette, smiling.
Yeah, like I said, he died of lung cancer, but I saw him a few days before he died. Cannula in his nose with oxygen, morphine drip in his arm for pain, cigarette in his hand. True to the end.
Ed, talk a little bit about how they treated you now. For instance, food, water, and I always wonder about medical care because they would beat you up. And if something got infected, did they take care of that, or did you guys just figure that out yourself?
Well, if you go back and look at the old film from 1973, other than the B-52 guys who were shot down late in the war, we were all, quote, in pretty good health. If you weren't healthy, if you had a bad injury, you died. They didn't have it to give to their own people, being kind. And the one person who did receive a lot of medical attention was John McCain. But they knew who he was and what he was, his father being a 4-star admiral and things like that. So they gave John, not at his request, I'm not trying to say he got any special favors at his own regard, but other than John McCain, we had one guy who came home with a short leg, Billy Metzger, because he had a broken bone and kind of set it himself to do it. So we were pretty much a healthy group of people who survived. If you weren't healthy, you didn't survive. Medical treatment throughout the time we were there was catch as catch can. I mean, when we got, I don't know how this is a family program, so I can't describe. There are certain parts of your body, crotch rotch, a hot, humid thing, we had that. So they'd come in periodically with iodine and, swipe your body in certain areas. If you needed, I really can't think of anything else. Although I lost a tooth after I broke a tooth. It split eating a rock and rice, and so I had a abscess for about 2 years. I didn't eat anything solid for about 2 years, and so one day 5 guys came into the cell, told me I was going to go see the boxy, a Vietnamese word for doctor or nurse, and they were going to fix my tooth. So they held me down. They went in with a pair of pliers, and they pulled a tooth, the last tooth on this side of my face. But it cured the abscess. I mean, I drained for several weeks after that, but I'm putting my tongue in that big hole I got back there now. But, that was...
Yeah, I imagine they didn't give you any Novocaine or any painkillers for that either.
just hold you down, reach in there. Yeah. Literally, it was kind of like... It looked like it was stainless steel, but it was more like a pair of pliers than a dental tool, and pulled out. Okay, now back to your other part of the question on that diet. Their figure is between 600 and 800 calories a day. I lost 66 pounds from when I went in to when I came out. We fed 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, about a quart volume of seaweed soup or chopped up pumpkins soup and a plate of rice. And so that was 6 days a week. And on Sunday, we were fed one meal of sugary rice, very sweet. So sweet that it was very hard even to keep down, but it's what we had to eat. So like I say, 600 to 800 calories a day. And by the way, that's how we kept track of time. We only got fed once on Sunday. So, but it was obviously enough to sustain us. And nobody died of malnutrition. I mean, we all had lots of parasites when we came home, which were fun describing and learning about, things we didn't know about. And we had lots of medical assumptions about our physical and mental health, some of which were true, some of which were kind of fabricated. But as a group, we were pretty doggone healthy. Now, you got to consider that we were not a bunch of young kids either. The average age of the guy who got shot down was 33. The average age of the guy who came home was 38. So we were a pretty mature group of guys and knew how to take care of ourselves and didn't have too many bad habits other than alcohol.
So, Here's a question. What
Mhm.
was your first meal when you were able to get anything that you wanted?
So,
Probably steak, I'm sure.
well, we got to the Philippines, and of all things, the dietitian, and we got that to the Philippines, was an Asian girl. Now you'd think after 6 years of eating food prepared by Asians that there'd be a little animosity toward the nation, but obviously there was none. That's just kind of an anecdotal aside. So I'm in this line, and I hadn't now eaten anything solid in about 2 years. So I get to the line, and this young nurse says, "What would you like?" And I said, "I would like a steak, a baked potato, and some beans and some bread, but I can't chew. My mouth is all messed up." And she says, "Oh, you can have it." She turned around to the cook. She says, "How would you like your steak?" I said, "Medium rare." I'm going along with the joke. She tells the cook, make him a medium rare. She give him a baked potato. Sour cream and chives? Yes, sour cream and chives. Okay. And baked beans? Yeah, you want bacon on your baked beans? Yeah, fine. And she says, "Then put it in a blender." So my first meal was steak, potatoes, beans, pureed.
And did that, was it great or was it
Oh, it was,
okay? Or
oh, it was fabulous. It was fabulous. I
so
mean,
you could taste all the elements in it.
oh yeah, I could taste something anyhow. But but again, like we were in the Philippines for like 48 hours. I spent 24 of them in a dental chair, and I mean, got absolutely fabulous dental treatment. I think I ended up with 13 root canals, and it was just great care, taking care of us when we got to the Philippines, and I still have most of those teeth. I've lost a few. Root canals are not a forever thing, but they did such a great job. I'm still not wearing dentures.
How long were you there in the Philippines?
About 48 hours.
Oh, that's all.
No,
Oh, I was thinking days.
no, just for a quick, quick medical check, and then the goal was to get us to a stateside hospital as quick as we can. So we went from Hanoi to the Philippines for 2 days, Hawaii for like several hours, and then on the Travis Air Force Base, where they then put us on airplanes going to different places. I went to Scott Air Force Base, and then later on that night, I got back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base about 1 o'clock in the morning on February 21st or 22nd, and I got out of jail on February 18th.
Were there people there greeting you when you got to Right Pat, or was it kind of
Yeah.
classified?
No, there were lots of people. It was 21 degrees below zero wind chill factor. There
Oh
were
my goodness.
a tremendous number of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base family there, yes.
Was it just you, or were there any others that came with you?
Two other guys were on that airplane with me. Charlie Plum from Indiana, and Don Heiliger, who lived up in Minnesota. So they had, other transportation to take them up there.
I want to go back, Ed, to your treatment there. Talk to me a little bit. One of the big ailments we have with veterans today is they're lonely and they don't like to depend on people. And that's a challenge. We got to break through that because everyone needs help.
Right.
And especially in that stressful situation, how did you guys, you were solo sometimes, you were with one person or three. How did you guys keep that bond, communicate?
Well, there was part of your question that you asked I didn't answer, and that was, the torture. The Vietnamese didn't speak a lot of English. We didn't speak a lot of Vietnamese. So the one common medium we had was physical discomfort, we'll say. So there was a lot of physical abuse to get you to do things, even to bow, or whatever they wanted you to do. It was usually not a request. Would you do? Would you? No, it was a beat the crap out of you, and then you would figure it out what they wanted you to do, and then you'd do some version of what they wanted you to do. But again, we go back to the fact that we were an older group. I was 24 when I got shot down, so I was, really one of the young guys there. But we had a lot of more mature guys there who were there to help us. The first guy I made contact with, communication, was Lieutenant Commander Bob Shoemaker, who had been there 2 years already. So, kind of give you the the feeling for what the ropes are, what to do, what not to do. You know, at one point he was my senior ranking officer, and I did what Bob said. So it was always one of those things that, okay, you're not a poor bastard. You're not the first guy here. You're not by yourself. You need us, the rest of the POWs, and we need you. So even though you're in isolation or living with one or two other guys, you know, there was always that sense of, I am not alone. I've got somebody I can fall back on. I've got somebody who's been through what I'm going through. So no time to feel sorry for myself.